Okay, the H1B guy here, and today the H1B guy live, unedited, unscripted Q&A 10, where we're going to talk about what's going on with HR1044 S386. But before we get started, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't already, to please subscribe to the H1B guy channel here on YouTube. It helps me to produce more content like this for you. I also wanted to mention the H1B guy offers a variety of consulting services. If I can provide you peace of mind by helping you bridge the gap between your employer and your immigration attorney, please reach out. I'd love to hear how I can help you. I also wanted to let everyone know that today's live stream is brought to you by RecruiterNetworks.com, the smart solution for digital perm ads since 2001. We already have almost 20 folks that have joined us here on this live stream. I would like to ask you right now if you can go ahead and hit like on the stream. Helps promote the algorithm here in YouTube. I just had a feeling this morning that I think based on a lot of the news that had been going on over the last few days, that it made sense for us to jump on here, do a Q&A, kind of talk about what's going on, what this means, what's next. And I really wanted to just give my unedited, unscripted thoughts around the Fairness for High Skilled Immigrants Act, as I think, that's been a big part of what we've talked about here on this channel since July. Really wanted to just let everyone know what my thoughts were, because I felt last week was very oddly quiet. Early in the week, it was quiet. And that kind of continued through the rest of the week. But the news that I thought really was the big trigger was when the news was breaking that S386 was not going to be included in the COVID relief bill. And I think that's very telling, because S386 is intended for paths to green card for medical professionals and registered nurses. And let's think about what their place right now in this country is, which is battling, the pandemic. We've seen case numbers really shoot through the roof over the last few weeks. And so when you see a bill like the Healthcare Workforce Resilience Act be removed from the COVID relief bill, you start to wonder what that meant when we think about HR 1044. As we've covered multiple times, what needed to take place for HR 1044 to pass. When it passed UC in the Senate, there were some amendments that were added to it. Those amendments had to be voted on again in the House, which required it to go through committee or be included on a bigger bill like the Omnibus bill. We talked about how that can be, very dangerous. And so, rumors began swirling a couple of weeks ago that the options were going to be through committee or through Omnibus. And what I've been able to piece together, and this is strictly my opinion, I have no inside sources telling me one way or the other, but it feels like that sort of stopped last Thursday. That in order for it to move forward, it looks like that stopped. And so, that is where you have to start to peel back and think, what does all of this mean for over 600,000 employment-based individuals who are currently in the queue, plus their spouses and dependents? What does that mean? And so, you look at all the fundraising efforts that have been going on. I supported a grassroots effort a little over a week ago that raised literally over $1,000 plus matching. I believe it was somewhere around $1,200 to $1,400 in a matter of 72 hours. It's amazing that you're willing to donate your time, your money. I'm in a couple of groups where the activity's been relentless. The planning's been great, and I've just been so proud of the effort. But you need to understand that effort's not lost, right? You've learned how to organize. You've learned how to assimilate. There's power in numbers. There's power in dollars, right? We've talked about that over and over. So go ahead and throw your questions in the chat. I'm going to cover kind of my 3 questions that I wanted to answer here today, and then I want to get to your questions. I've got some comments from my thread on Twitter today that I think tell a lot, because I think there's just this uneasiness right now. I feel it, and I'm American born and bred, but I feel the uneasiness. It's palpable. It is something that is so emotionally driven because you've chosen to pursue a dream here and now are being told that you're just going to have to wait more. And I think that that's what creates the emotion and the anxiety around it. So, like this video, put your questions in the chat. I'll get to it. Share the live stream out there. We've already gone over 30 connected. So I think that is a new high for the unedited, unscripted Q&As. There was a comment that I got on YouTube that I wanted to address before I get into these questions. So last Friday, I got a comment on YouTube, and it said that I needed to do more live Q&A streams, like an immigration firm that does them. And so I wanted to just kind of clear the air. I commented on it. If you've read that comment, I'm sorry for the repeating here, but I want to make 2 points. The first is that I am not an immigration attorney. I have no intentions of ever being one. An immigration attorney is very vital in this process, and you've got to have a good one. If you don't, I have a couple that I could refer to you. Reach out, okay? But understand the immigration attorney works for your employer, all right? Unless you've hired outside counsel on your own. I do not give legal advice here on this channel. I give opinions, my personal opinion based on my interpretation, okay? So that is for your entertainment and personal use, okay? The second point that I'm going to make is this. I've been doing these Q&As since we launched this channel back at the beginning of July. And the growth that I've seen through the comments and through you guys joining me here, I haven't done one of these, and it's been 3 weeks since I've done one of these. And you know, the comments that I receive and the interactivity that I get through these and through the Stamp It Outs, I just really appreciate it. So enough of that. Let's jump to the questions that I have, and then I want to get to your guys' questions. So, why wasn't it included in the Omnibus and COVID relief bill? And so I've talked about this a few times, but I think that question needs to be answered because the Baltimore Sun, I believe, has a great article that talks about everything that's included in the omnibus and COVID relief. You're talking about $1.4 trillion in funding, $900 billion in COVID relief. So we're talking about, I mean, dollar amounts that to me are just unfathomable, really. But why wasn't it included? Well, because it would have made both bills vulnerable, both meaning the COVID relief bill, the omnibus, and HR1044 S386. We've seen prior precedent where immigration reform has been included in omnibus bills. I think that was 2004, 2005 timeframe that we've seen that, but it's not common. Understand that omnibus comes out of appropriations. Immigration comes out of judiciary committees. And so 2 completely different committees. Bills aren't intended to be written that way, or laws aren't. But sometimes we do see that happen out of necessity. But looks like that wasn't the case here today. So, or yesterday, or really, as I said, going back to Thursday is what I've been able to piece together. So that's why. I mean, it would have made the debates surrounding the approval on the omnibus and the COVID relief and all of the dollar amounts associated with it. It would have made it challenging to have full support. You've seen some senators holding out because of how they want the law to be changed based on the overriding of the CARES Act. So that's why this didn't happen. It just didn't make sense because right now, what's most pressing? COVID relief, right? The talks of the second stimulus wave, the unemployment increases, the small business protections, the rent that you see included. That's a very interesting inclusion. Rent forgiveness, rental forgiveness. So they just didn't touch immigration and this go around. So the next one that I wanted to talk about is there any possibility for extension for Congress, right? As we've looked at, you know, going back to December 8th, the extension that happened around the 10th, up to the 18th, and then you see, you know, a 24-hour or 48-hour extension through midnight of last night, then extended again through midnight tonight. Yes, we could see another extension. I don't think we will. But, you know, as being reported, once the omnibus and COVID relief bill passes today, the likelihood of an extension happening is very minimal, very small. Um, but as we've talked about, we've gone over deadlines. Last week, I alluded to, I thought that there could even be a possibility that we could see extension through 12/31. Understand that once we get past January 3rd, that's when it turns over completely. Now, is Congress going to hold an emergency session to pass HR 1044? I don't think so. I think if it were detrimental to the economy, right? Meaning the continuation as part of something bigger, then possibly. But unfortunately, this legislation impacts 1.2 million lives. It's not a small number at all. But I don't think that after today's vote, once approved, these hard reps and senators have been going hard. And I think, Christmas Eve is Thursday, Christmas is Friday. So really you've got 2 days of an extension, and then, leading into next week, you've got what, Monday, um, which would be the 28th, 29th, 30th. So very little time here. If there were to be an extension, I don't think they would extend just for this particular bill, unless for some reason the vote didn't happen today, or the omnibus didn't pass and they had to extend by another 24 hours the funding, because that's really what it's about. It's about the government shutdown, the funding of the omnibus that funds the government programs, right? So, but yeah, I mean, there is a very small glimmer of hope, and that glimmer of hope is January 3rd. Once we cross past that date, then things change. They just do. And I don't want to sell you hope here. That's not what this channel's ever been about. I think a lot of you who have been following me for any amount of time know that that's not the intention of this channel. I'm going to give you both sides. I'm going to piece together my opinion, and that's where I'm at on it. I think you still have until January 3rd. But does that mean that Congress is going to vote on 12/31? No, realistically, they're not. So the window is very small. If there is an extension, it'd be early next week. Still has to come out of committee, and I haven't seen anything on that. If you have, drop it in the comments below, and I'll get to it. So that leads to the third question that I wanted to ask and answer with an opinion here today, and that's what's next for HR 1044. S386, and that's this. And I've said this now for a couple of months. Once we found out Joe Biden was going to be the 46th president of the United States, I've talked about what would the timelines look like, first 100 days, and then after that. And so here's where I'm at on that. I believe you're still going to see some very familiar sponsors that have had their names associated to HR 1044 and S386 champion this cause. I think that we could see introduction of some type of legislation in May or June of 2021. What do I think would be in that legislation? Well, I think you've seen some really common themes that have developed through HR 1044 and through S386 as the amendments have been added, as some language has been retracted. I think, and this is in no particular order, but I think in May or June, you're going to see legislation that will be introduced in the House and in the Senate through committee that will include the 50-50 rule, the whistleblower rule, the elimination of country caps for countries of origin for employment-based preferences. And I also think you'll see some sort of plan to eliminate the current green card backlog, some sort of long-term resolution. So I don't know if we'll see all of those together, though, right? And if we don't, does that mean that it has to all be amended and come back through? Yeah, I mean, I think when we've talked about this multiple times. What do the employers have to gain? What do the individuals have to gain? But what does America have to gain? And I think when you look at some of these, the 50-50 rule, the whistleblower rule, they curb fraud and abuse. It makes the H1B, in a sense, less desirable to attack, right? Because now you're talking about it really becomes more employment driven. And to me, if you're going to get some sort of resolution in the green card backlog and what that long-term plan looks like, there has to be some reform around the H1B. To me, the two, well, you may not think it does, go hand in hand, because the H1B cycle and the 85,000 visas issued every year and the flooding of visas that have been petitions, H1B petitions that the integrators submit every year. You're talking about thousands of blanket petitions in the HCAP. I think you're going to see a big change in 2021 as we go to the highest wage for the lottery selection. So that to me is going to be very interesting to see how this transpires as we get into January, really January 20th, right? We've talked about still keeping our eyes on that date because that first 100 days, the plans that they have in place, what are they going to rescind? What immigration laws are they going to attack early? And then after the 100 days, how are they going to work within Congress to change some of that? So that's my thoughts on what's next, is that I think in May or June, we're going to see some very similar language in a new bill. And that's the best that I have to offer if we don't see anything before January 3rd. Probably nothing new. Probably stuff that a lot of you out there who have kept up with me and supported me already are fully aware of. This isn't a surprise. But I wanted to ask you, we have a new record here on the H1B Guy channel. I'm just so excited and humbled. We have for the first time, over 50 streamers live on this live stream right now. So I'm going to ask you to please like this video. I'm going to go into some Twitter comments right now. And then I want you guys, let's post them in the chat. And I'm just going to go through them and we can hash it out. We can talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. If you agree or disagree with any of the 3 points on the questions that I've made and gone over today. So that's, why wasn't it included in the Omnibus COVID relief bill? Is there any possibility of congressional extension? And what's next for the Fairness for High-Skilled Immigrants Act? So I'm going to go ahead and move on to Twitter. But like I said, if you guys can like this video, we'd just really appreciate it. Suresh says, is it included in the omnibus bill? And of course, that answer is no, as we've already covered. And, this is what I love about Twitter threads. At IMRK came in and said, no, it wasn't. And then when I posted this at 11 o'clock today, dude, there is nothing more to discuss about that bill. And then he continued on with Dims and ours both played nice games at Backlog Community's expense. Yeah, I mean, I think that you're rightful to feel that way. There was a lot of political jockeying, and the high-skilled immigrants were a pawn in that, right? You've got to understand that's how politics is played, and that you can replace high-skilled immigrants with some other individual class or really anything as it relates to law reform. So Iswar says, there is nothing to discuss. This bill is done for good. After spending my whole youth of 15 years here, I came to the conclusion that this country is not for honest and hardworking people who follow rules. It rewards people who can find loopholes or play race card. And then continued on, say, came here with a lot of hopes to start my own company in Silicon Valley. All of my dreams are shattered with these visa restrictions. Nothing to be more proud of in my life anymore. It's time to focus on earning as much as I can. Yeah. I mean, I think I know a handful of people that feel the same way. This is not an uncommon feeling right now. The fear and the anxiety and the insecurity that goes along with being an H1B visa is really resonating with you guys right now because of the ups and downs and the roller coaster of this experience, and how you fought so hard for the Fairness for High-Skilled Immigrants Act. Very rightfully so. I mean, it's unfortunate that H1B visa holders can't own businesses. And I have a few things I'm working on right now with some new contacts that I've made to try to help champion some change around that, right? That's not going to happen overnight. but it is something that we have to talk about because here's someone like Iswar that wanted to start their own company, probably a tech startup, um, and probably would create jobs, but is unable to do so. And this is a constant theme and one of the negatives that we hear about, H1Bs. Um, my good friend at EV Guy 7 says, no, mate, got to understand the forces behind the scenes. Yeah, you're talking about political favors. You're talking about lobbyists. You're talking about the transition that's taking place and how when that happens, there becomes some very interesting bedfellows. And so I think when you look at, and I've talked about this multiple times, way back when I did the video, which, again, I was kind of right, kind of wrong, where I said S386 would not pass. I never thought it would get out of the Senate because I didn't think Senator Rick Scott would unblock his hold. But with the inclusion of the amendment that didn't allow for anyone affiliated with the Chinese military to become a permanent resident, that created some vulnerability in sections. I think that's section 9. I could be wrong on that, but again, there's that political favor, right? And so that's what it comes down to. And some more just Twitter comments. Have we not figured that out in a decade? The Immigration Law Association feeding off the backlog community. Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about this, and here is I'm also feeling the same, right? I think that's common right now, and that's why I wanted to do this live stream today. Is I could have written a long form essay and just talked to you guys about what's going on. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to have you on so you guys could vent your frustrations. I give you a platform to do that. Whether I agree or disagree with your comments, that is to be determined, right? But what I will tell you is that this feeling is what happens in politics. It is a war. And if you've watched Game of Thrones, I mean, that's what's happened. It just is. It's very common. So wanted to ask you guys, if you haven't already, like this video, subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube. I checked earlier, I was 705 for subscribers, pushing ever closer to that 1,000. I can't do it without your guys' support. If you're joining me for the first time, you just stumbled on, who's this guy with the moniker of the H1B Guy talking about immigration or HR1044. Listen, I have over a 16-year career in the private sector and helping medium tech startups to large enterprises with their STEM staffing. I managed a very large immigration program. I have recruited and transferred and submitted dozens and dozens of H1B cases. I have completed well over 30 perm labor certifications in my career. And so what I am now is sort of the glue between you, your employer, and your immigration attorney. I also work with employers to help them establish programs to recruit the best and brightest, processes around that compliance and audits. And so thank you all for taking the time to join. Like I said, please like. I'm going to jump into the YouTube Q&A now. If you have questions, please, let's get them in the chat now. I will go through every chat that I have until we're done here today, because this is my channel, but this platform is for you. And I want to continue to produce content for you. And so, listen, if there's things that you want me to cover heading into 2021, let's look forward, because I think that that's what right now is for, is we have to look ahead. We still have to have hope and know what's the timeline for what's next. If this doesn't happen, what's next? And so, hey, Suresh, how you doing? Is there still hope? I mean, I think, as I said, January 3rd is the day that you give up hope. January 3rd, midnight, I guess, technically, if you want me to clarify, 12 a.m. on 1/4/2021 would be the day that would be the day that I would give up hope. Now, there's always the possibility of an executive action sometime after January 20th. I don't think that's realistic. It's possible. It is possible. So, thanks, Suresh. Appreciate you joining the stream. Hey, Abhishek, how you doing, my friend? Thank you for joining another live stream. I mean, you have just become a regular during these live streams, contributing. I just thank you so much for your support, for taking the time to join me out of your work day. I know a lot of you are off, but just really appreciate it. Um, HR1044 is dead now. It was never alive. I think Indians need to find other way to get green card, like EB5 investor visa, et cetera. Yeah, we've covered that $1 million investment, but those have become highly competitive right now. They're not easy to get, but if you've got the money, right? I think that you can do a lot of things if you've got the money. We've talked about this over and over. How financially conservative, in my experience in dealing with H1B visas that are here in the U.S. are, and the assets and the wealth that they collect in a very short amount of time compared to most Americans is it's staggering, and it's what a lot of people don't want to talk about. And I'm not afraid of it. I have several friends who are my personal friends who have been here on H1B that are very high earners, that have collected and accumulated a lot of assets, and that at some point they are going to be in a position to start businesses and create jobs. But for now, they're just in accumulation of wealth mode, very similar to the point that IMRK was making. So, hey, I just saw we just set another record here. Thank you guys. Over 60 currently on this live stream. Wow, I'm so grateful for everyone who's taken the time to join me here today. I guess based on some of the comments that I got on Twitter, I wasn't sure, but I think, listen, let's vent this thing out here today. Drop a comment in, I'll pull it up. If you want to have your voice heard, I'm going to bring it up today. So, hey, Vera, so good to hear from you. Thank you for taking the time to join. I think it's dead. Yeah, I mean it. Geez, it sure feels like it, doesn't it? This morning, I read the news last night of the extension through today. Started reading through, trying to find text, and of course, there's no mention of it. So, you start to dive in further, and you don't see it. So it goes back to what is the option. And the option that's left is for it to come out of conference committee and hit the chamber floor in the House and be voted on before January 3rd. The percentage possibility of that happening is very small. But if we were to go back to the beginning of January, what was that first Wednesday right after Thanksgiving, December 2nd? December 2nd at 5:45 p.m. Eastern time, in a minute and 45 seconds, S386 hit the Senate floor, was read, and amendments were approved, and it was voted in UC. I never saw that coming until literally about 20 minutes before it happened, thanks to some of my inside sources. And so, wow, is it dead? It feels that way, but you still have until January 3rd. Hey, Samir, how you doing? I'm still confused why IV is not yet confirmed any news. They should clear the air and end this anxiety. Yeah, I mean, it's it's crazy. It really is. I will tell you that the emotions that I've had, um, they're almost, I want to say, unexplainable. But I think a lot of you understand that times about 100, right? Because my status here is safe, and yours is not, and I think that that's the difference. That a lot of you that interact and reach out to me, that's the difference in what our daily lives are like. It just is. I've talked about it. we've talked about this freedom of choice. And the interesting thing is, the last two books I've read, I read this book called The Greatest Miracle in the World. And then I also read this book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving Up, expletive. And both of those books, the underlying message was about choice. And so, that's the great thing about all this is a lot of people will put it back on you that, hey, you chose to knowingly get in this line. Yeah, but you didn't know the line was going to be 15 years long, right? I mean, we're talking about EB2 preferences for December bulletin, which the January bulletin's still not out. But October 1st, 2009 for EB2. So yeah, I mean, I think going to be interesting to see when that bulletin comes out, not to derail that, but my forecast and prediction video is the most watched for January on this channel, over 4,000 views. So thank you guys who've taken the time to watch that. I'm working on tightening up those forecast videos. I am going to make sure that that is the kind of quality that you guys want. Of course, their opinions, predictions, and hunches. But I'm going to try to tighten up some of the data and get some more graphics, and not overly graphic, because you come here to see me, right? But is the omnibus text out? Suresh asked. Yeah, so I don't have. Let me see if I can. There was a good. If you just Google omnibus and do the Baltimore, I think it's Baltimore Sun. Very much, it just breaks out in little paragraphs what's in the omnibus. It's not all the language. It's not the entire bill, but it breaks it out, just what's in there. There's one thing in there, the Army Corps of Engineers. I think they got over 10 million for water, and that thing's like, I think it said 30 pages. So if you've got time to read through that, want to report back on that, sir, just keep me posted. But yeah, I would. The text is out. It has to be out. You probably should be able to find it on house.gov. So listen, guys, I've talked about this before. I still will support this cause. Um, you know, they have over almost 30,000 followers on Twitter. They're not a grassroots organization. They've done a lot, and they need to be commended for that. But as I've talked about, there's some of their tactics I don't agree with. Attacking U.S. senators and attacking your champion in the House of Representatives is not going to win you politics in the long run. It's just not. I'm not bashing on them. That's my opinion. But they know how to raise money. So they're a nonprofit organization. They're going to have to figure out how to use some of that money to lobby going into 2021. So if I'm them right now, or if anyone from them or associated with them is watching this, here's my advice. Okay? Because you haven't asked me and you probably don't care, but here it is. You better start making some big donations to some of your champions right now. That's it. You've got the money to do it. You've proved you can raise the capital. So time to start spending those lobbyist dollars. And if you don't have a good lobbyist, I'd get one and pay them a good salary, because they can help you. I left Jim McGovern, my representative, a message yesterday. A woman from her office called back today, and she said that it's not included in the omnibus bill. It's definitely heart sinking, though. Yeah. Ishan, thanks for joining me. I know last week you talked about the anxiety that you were going through and spiraling. I'm so sorry. I am. It feels like you're being told you're not wanted, right? And that's a shitty feeling. Sorry if that offends any of you. It just is. And so, yeah. But Ashan, you've done the right thing. You've reached out to your elected representative. While you don't probably have a vote, I'm guessing you don't. You are still a constituent in Rep. McGovern's district. And the fact that one of his staffers called you back tells me that Rep. McGovern is willing to listen to you. So maybe in the next year or so, Sean, you make an appointment when he's in office, local, and go meet with him and his staff and tell them your story. Because that's something I've tried to do here with the Stamp It Outs is tell your stories. And when folks understand how much you earn, right, and what you do, and how niche your skill is, and how in demand it is, it's amazing what happens. So, Sean, if I can help you in any way, thank you for your support. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you're feeling the way you feel because I sense it. I sensed it from you last week, and I sense it here in this message. Hey, Abhishek, it was never included in the omnibus bill. Why did I expect that? Again, it's politics, right? Um, you go back to Breitbart was reporting that it was going to be included early last week. You may not like that source, but you gotta use the source for what it is. You've got to use all sources, right, left, middle, and merge them together to form an opinion. And they were reporting that it was going to be included on the omnibus. And then when S3599 was removed from the COVID relief, it makes me think that it still could be included on the omnibus because that would solve the medical and RN issues. Not fully, but some for the most part. So that's why I thought that it would be, because we talked about, way back when I did the live stream right after it passed, where I was just giddy as a school child and so excited and thought, hey, this thing is going to happen. And then I took some time over the weekend, digested it, and came out with, kind of what's next, if you will. And that's where you start to get this uneasy feeling of what are the options, through conference committee or on the omnibus. And so, yeah, that's why I had that feeling. Hey, Arik, Bhattacharya, thanks for taking the time to join me. So, what's next from this bill in the next year under Biden? Yeah, I mean, that's what I covered earlier in the stream. And I'll just kind of go over it again. So, my guess, Arik, is that probably May or June of 2021, we will see some new legislation. I would guess it'd be from some very familiar sponsors of the Fairness for High Schooled Immigrants Act. And my guess is you're going to see some bipartisan work done up front that would include, in no order, the 50-50 rule, the whistleblower rule, the elimination of country quotas for employment-based preferences, and some sort of long-term solution to end the current green card backlog. That's my prediction. I definitely am going to cover that more in the next couple of weeks because I'm going to do some 2021 predictions. But that gives you a little sneak peek. There'll be some repetition around that, but that's what I think will happen. Hey, Vera again says, I think this is deliberately ignored by House except Mike Lee and the draft preparer Lofgren. Yeah, and I will tell you, a lot of you have found me and are following me on Twitter. Um, I've seen some attacks directed towards Rep Lofgren today. I don't agree with that, but you know, you're emotional, and sometimes we get personal. I'm not saying you, Vera, but I'm just saying in general. Yeah, Mike Lee and Senator Mike Lee and Rep Lofgren were the sponsors in each of the chambers, and so thanking them, a nice handwritten note to both of their offices would go a long way. It would. Uh, because guess what? I think, it ultimately comes down to having their support into the future. So, gonna need it. You need champions. Wanted to ask you, if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube. We've got a ton more comments. If you got any more comments or questions, I saw we're a little over 60 earlier. We had jumped up over 80. So thank you guys for taking the time to join this stream. Just really appreciate it. So Sean says, I don't really have much skin in the game since I'm just a student RN. There's a lot more countries that embrace my skills. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of you are feeling that way, right? And all the congressmen going to change in January. Yeah, a lot of those gonna have to make new relationships, right? build new relationships, understand who your new elected officials are, understand what their sides and stances are as it relates to um, a lot of their policies. A lot of You'd be surprised how few of our elected officials actually know what an H-1B visa is and how it works, understand employment-based preferences and green card sponsorship from employers. They don't really understand it. So tag them on my channel. I'd love to help them understand it. Is if there's any loser, that's this country that couldn't get a sensible reform done in more than a decade. Psh, a decade. Sean, we're talking about 1990. Yeah, that's scary. 30 years. November 1990. The Immigration Act of 1990. Uh, Introduced by Senator Ted Kennedy. There you go. There's a hard hitting fact. That was the creation of job based preferences, the EB1 through 5 category. Goes back to that and the country of quota, country of origin quota, goes back to 1990. If this bill's not passed, wait for another 10 to 20 years. I don't think so. Maybe I'm holding out hope. I don't think so. I think that it's not the hottest topic in the news, but it definitely has a lot of attention. And the more you assimilate numbers and dollars, you're going to continue to get attention. I'm in the USA for the last 15 years, coming to the USA just to study without any intention of working. It's hard now. Yeah, I mean, I think, there's a lot of channels out there that talk about coming to the US as a student and what that cycle is. Listen, the cycle is the cycle. If you're from India or China and you're going to come here on an OPT or F1 and then get an OPT and it's going to be STEM, your choice is to work that 36 months, try to get an H1B awarded in the lottery, or just simply make your money, earn as much as you can, get 3 years of US experience, and then make a decision. I know that's not probably what a lot of you want to hear, but that just is what the cycle is right now. It just is. Because you've got 20,000 that are awarded in the advanced degree category. You've got another 65 that are for foreign national bachelors, right? Equivalents. But understand the cycle before you come here, that you're going to be here in school for 2 years. If you get a STEM degree, you can work on a W-2 for up to 36 months, but there's no guarantee past that. So make as much as you can, get as much experience as you can, and use that to your advantage, whether that's here or somewhere else. That is the decision, and that's just the fact. Imagine being so complacent that getting all the tax money and the social security from these 1.2 million people and then showing them the middle finger. Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about that a good bit. That to me is why we always have to point back to a merit-based system. Once we go to a points-based system, it's based on merit, based on education with high values put it on U.S. institutions, bachelor's or advanced masters, right? And then the points awarded on skill, English command tests. So, yeah, I think we can end a lot of this with a merit-based system. And I'm going to continue to talk about that because to me, that is the solution that solves the problem. No F1 DS change rule, it seems. Oh, that's interesting. Have to look into that. Uh, I understand there was an H1B abuse, but the number is less. Punish the people who abuse the system, but do not tag everyone else. Just remove the bad apples, not the whole bunch. People have dreams. Yep. Hey, Rom, thanks for joining me, man. You've been one of my biggest supporters of these live streams from all the way back in July, early on. And you're right. The problem is that, as reported last week, the news last Friday, you had another H1B lawsuit that was settled, and so that's just common. What's happening? You see all these lawsuits that happen in terms of fraud and displacement of U.S. workers, and um, it makes it very general. And then you have people like Rom who've been a perm employee with the same company, what, 8 years, Rom? Six at least, I know, uh, and vital to his employer. Um, so forget green card, and this bill will take another 10 to 20 years to come to the table. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are feeling that way. Uh, Taxes paid are all gone, and all efforts that Indians do were highly discriminated. I mean, I think that that's definitely a lot of the feeling, Vera, right? Is that there was this real hope. And I think that's what the December 2nd, when it passed UC, Senator Scott finally took his block off of it. There was this hope, this false sense of hope that over the last 19 days was created. Need to move. It's hard, but truth. I don't want my daughter to suffer the same. Yeah, I mean, I think Samir has an H4 daughter who's a Delca kid and will age out. I think 8 or 9 years, I believe. Um, and Samir's been working very hard on her behalf, thinking ahead. And this is the fear. And the thing is with Samir, and I've gotten to personally know Samir, over the last several weeks. And the thing with Samir is that he has an option. His employer has another international office. So we could lose somebody that's really talented and a contributor like Samir because of the uncertainty for his child. And I don't blame him. I hate it, but I don't blame you. So let's talk about what those options are if you're not Samir. I mean, you've got merit based in Canada, the UK as of a few weeks ago, New Zealand, Australia, as I've covered. So yeah, there are options out there. I hate it, but it's the truth. These representatives are expecting some funds, but they're not realizing that our taxes are helping these reps to survive too. Yeah, I mean, I think you go back to legal tax paying resident. That term. What does that term mean? What value is in that term? Legal, temporary, tax paying resident with a specialty occupation, highly skilled. Yeah. I wish I had the control, the country of birth. This is so sad. Is a sin to be born in India and come to the U.S. with a dream? Is color skin the problem? No, I don't think it is. Of course, that's going to play a part in a very small minority. I think the problem is if you look back in the early 2000s when there was a shortage of skill, the whole Y2K and kind of leading into that, the lifting of the caps where you're talking about 195,000, 200,000 new H's being issued out. And then you look at when the lottery goes to the cap back to, the 65 and then the 20 that were added later on. You've just had this cycle. So, and people have talked about this a lot. There's no cap on the country of origin for H1Bs, but yet there is a cap on the employment-based preferences for country of origin. So it's created this cycle of high-skilled indentured servitude because they're tied to their employer. And so I don't think, to me personally, it's about the color of your skin as much as it is the numbers. And this is just my thoughts around it. The numbers of individuals that have come to the U.S. under H1B from India and from China, even. I think that those numbers are just crazy out of whack, and that's created this big problem, the 1.2 million that we've talked about. And there really isn't, or I haven't seen a resolution that's perfect. There. I don't know if there is one. One should realize that 1.2 million taxes are helpful to save American citizens for COVID relief, but not um, these taxpayers. Yeah, I mean, again, we need funds from everywhere. When you're talking about 900 billion for COVID relief, part of a 1.4 trillion omnibus. Sorry for my earlier questions. I understand that you don't have answers for that. Just sharing the pain and frustration. You are too good at listening to all these questions. You have a good soul. Hey, I'd like to think that, but I struggle with some things in my life. I mean, I think we all do. We all have our own set of problems. Um, but I was watching something earlier this morning, and it was talking about uh, doing what you love. And I guess I realized very early on in my staffing career that I was very passionate about these H-1B visas for some reason. I don't know why. I'm just very attracted to what it is because it's so complicated. And so what I realized is, you know what? I have this niche, right? I've talked about it a lot. I'm not going to get into it much, but just know that I'm very passionate about what I do here. I'm passionate about equality. I'm passionate about helping people, and I'm passionate about educating folks on something that's very complicated to understand. Most of you probably have a very good understanding of the process. So I'm just hoping to expand on that. But then there are a lot of people in my circle who watch this channel who are just like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I really like it. um, I find it entertaining for some reason or another. So thanks, Rom. Appreciate your support, man. Hey, Himanshu, how you doing? Is H4 premium processing going to start soon at least? I haven't seen any notifications on the H4 premium processing yet. Um, if any of the almost 60 folks that are watching this right now streaming, if you know, drop it in the comment and I'll pull it up for Himanshu. But I saw it, what is it, over $2,000 now for premium processing, but they still haven't taken any of the H4s. I'm aware of a handful of H4 cases, one as long ago as February 2020 that's still pending. So there's some ridiculous wait times on some of these H4 cases out there, the I-765s, I believe, that are filed on those behalfs and adjudicating those. Some really long waits, and it's creating problems. You can't work if you don't have work authorization. So, if you haven't already, please like this video. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube. Um, I produce weekly content, news, advice, opinions, reform, discussions around the H1B and other employment-based immigration preferences. Hey, Kapil, good to see you, man. Thanks for joining me. You know the spending and accumulation habits. Absolutely. Um, Financially conservative, but you do like nice things, don't you? Um, and there's nothing wrong with that. Work hard, play hard, right? Hey, Harsha. So what's next? As I said earlier, and thanks for joining. You may have missed it, and I'll just cover it very quickly here. What's next is that you have until January 3rd. If there is an extension of Congress through 12/31 or even over the next couple of days, there's a possibility it could come out of conference committee and onto the chamber floor of the House. I haven't heard any rumors of that being a possibility, but until they say they're done for the year, January 3rd's the date. If that happens, January 3rd comes and goes, then as I've said earlier, I expect some sort of new legislation to be introduced in both chambers, the House and the Senate, sometime in May or June of 2021. And it would include some very similar language, specifically 50/50 whistleblower, elimination of country caps, and some sort of long-term resolution for the current green card backlog. So that's what I think is next. Hey, Robert, how are you doing? Any update on the 2021 visa bulletin? Man, Syed, I have been looking because I predicted that it would release last Thursday or Friday. Those were my 1 and 2 dates. Wrong and wrong. But, you know, 1 and 2 dates, 1 and 2 dates. 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 1 this all comes out from the Department of State, travel.gov. And unless it drops tomorrow or Wednesday, I have a real good feeling about my Monday prediction of next week. That was my third date. Um, but yeah, I alluded to that video earlier, the H1B Guy forecast, January 2021 visa bulletin predictions, the first video I've had on this channel that went over 4,000 views. So thank you guys for all of that support. Love the fact that you guys love my prediction videos, because I really like making them. They are a lot of fun to do, to make dates up. While I do use historical data evidence, it still is, we're making guesses here. So when will the U.S. consulates resume H-1B stamping? I've seen some reports of some folks getting stampings done in India specifically. I'm referring to here. I've seen Hyderabad and one or two others. But these were expedited exception requests, and those individuals were perm employees working directly for the sponsoring petitioner. I don't know what your situation is, Narav, but that was their cases. Pretty straightforward. The interview questions were very straightforward as well. But I mean, I think a lot of this still is being dictated by the pandemic. I know the numbers in India were pretty crazy too. So, but I would guess fully resume back to normal. I don't know. March. Otherwise, it's going to be long-term appointment based. So if you're outside of the country looking to get back in, I wish you nothing but good luck. If you're in the U.S. thinking about going out and you don't have a current stamp, I would advise you to stay for as long as you can hold out. Hey, Vijay Prakash, can you talk to the process? Soon, a new bill has to go from the House to Senate and then to President. So S386 is RAP. Just read the Omnibus bill, no traces of HR1044 in it. Yeah, so what happens, and again, I'm not a political science major. I have not studied law, but this is just my understanding around the lawmaking process, which is there would be a member of the Judiciary Committee that would sponsor a bill within the committee, and it would be promoted out and work its way out of committee, approved, voted yes, until it eventually is called on the floor. And it works the same way in the Senate, works its way through committee before making its way to the floor. And what you would have is, if it made its way through the House, you'd have some sort of refinement potentially, or even the current language would go in through committee and then work its way through the floor. It can go to majority vote, or also can go through UC, which you've seen. The UC is not as common, but that was used this time by Senator Mike Lee, which was an interesting tactic. And he had it 99% several times for several months. But that's the best way I can understand it, is that there would be a process to it. So let's say it was introduced in May, just say mid-May, introduced in committee. It could be on the House floor by July of 2021. If you remember, it was on the House floor in July of 2019 when it passed. I believe that was the 365 to 65 vote. So Vijay Prakash, anything interesting that stood out to you in the omnibus bill? If you're still watching, anything that grabbed your attention on it in terms of the funding allocation? I believe someone should put out in numbers exactly how it helps with legal immigration and how it hurts the whole plight of people waiting in backlog in the form of a detailed documentary. I don't know if any Americans even know what we go through. Only a few people like Robert, aka the H1B guy, but more people need to know it's as simple as visiting your parents at will is difficult. Yeah. Oh, guys, we've talked about this so much. Your freedom of choice is taken from you when you decide, you make the conscious choice to be an H1B visa. And that freedom of choice is that if you decide to leave your current employer to change to another employer, there's a lot that has to go into that. Um, you are told how much you can be paid at a minimum. You're told how long your visa is good for. And sometimes you're told that you aren't allowed to get back into the country because you've been selected for 221G for one piece of evidence. So, yeah, that's what people don't understand is that the freedoms and liberties of choosing who you work for, how much you're paid, and where and when you want to go outside of the country are taken from you. The average American doesn't understand that. William Hahn wrote on Vox, and he talks about most Americans think you just go down to the DMV to file for your work visa. It's an interesting concept, but dang, the DMV is not a place you'd want to be filing your work visa. I know that. Ban emphasis TCS WePro and half our problems will be over. People with US masters, PhDs should be given a preference or just prioritize H1 or GC based on wages. Yeah, I mean, I think the problem with the integrators is the blankets and then how they use Indian law against their employers. Right. So the withholdings and the threatening of that, they do that. Those employment agreements are signed in India, so they have no validity here. They're just legally obligated to pay whatever wage level um, those individuals come at based on their title, and they will hold them back from advancement so that they don't have to pay them more. And it creates a problem. It creates a cycle. And most of these integrators here on this list won't do GC perm sponsorship. So what happens is that you work for an integrator for whatever employment commitment you have. Let's say it's 24 months. Well, then you start looking to change employers. You've already got 2 years down on your visa, and you're looking for an employer who's willing to sponsor your GC process. The time just keeps ticking. So, yeah, even Desi Consultancy Services. I mean, I think you're referring to the middleman there, Nikhil. But WePro and TCS folks do support level jobs, which can be done by high school grads. I challenge anyone to prove me wrong. Why give them H1B? I will tell you though, there's a few integrators that I have found in pockets of just as I work my network over the years that hired some really sharp people. I mean, best and brightest. So I think to blanket all the Indian integrators is, done by high school grads. I don't necessarily agree with all of that. Here's the rest of the comment. But I agree with some of it because it's undercut, right? You basically have, they come in and they bulk sell teams. But if we're not going to bring them in, we do expose the possibility of offshore. So. Hey, Dr. Raj, good to hear from you. So he says, on a bigger picture, do I think high skilled Indians are being discriminated? This is going to affect India US relations. How can India trust US? Yeah. I mean, I think you saw the whole rigmarole with Modi and Trump happen and the sellout or, stadiums and everything that kind of went into that. Yeah, U.S.-India relations are going to be very interesting. I think, the first few months will be intriguing to see how Biden handles the H-1B. I've talked about it. I expect a lot of the same as we saw in the Obama era, but that's a great point, Dr. Raj. I mean, I hadn't thought about that angle yet, but I could see how there's some strain because you're creating this unrest, right? And you're sending legal immigrants back, right? So, yeah, I could see how that could create some, but I don't know. I don't know. So yeah, follow the rules, but there are some Indian consultancies registered within U.S. are abusing and still abusing the H-1B visas. Yeah, you're right. I mean that goes back to the employment agreements where they were signed and how they're held against the employees. Hey, yeah, Dr. Roger won't affect anything. People will still be coming here. Yeah, that seems to be the sentiment of a lot of people. But I think look at the student numbers. All the student channels are out there are talking about fall 2021 and spring 2022. So I think you're going to see a big drop in international student numbers. We've seen that already in the approvals, but I think you're going to see that trend down. What I'm really interested to see will be what the lottery for the H1Bs look like and what those numbers like. We've seen, over 200,000 for several years in a row. Will we hit that number again, or will it be much less? Sanjay, I think that'd be a very telling number, don't you? I saw some US-based H1B consultancies who are taking the H1B petition numbers and faking it with different names and sending OPT candidates as H1B workers. That abuse is being happening. Well, hopefully with the whistleblowers, we can put an end to that, because that's not right. And as I've talked about, if companies are abusing the H1B, abusing OPT workers, and not following, the laws as written, then they need to be audited and investigated, because that's what we can't have happen. We can't have the fraud to be allowed to be rampant when we have folks like you that are fighting every day to survive legally. And so if you're aware of companies that are doing it, I know there's some hotline numbers out there. I'm not saying that, we want to put their name out in blood, right? But, you've got to make a decision. And if you're aware of fraud, do you report it or not? And to me, we just can't have it happen. I will tell you, legitimately speaking, I was very adamant about all of my verifications and making sure that I had all my ducks in order when I worked with third party H1B candidates. You just can't have it. So, and here's the text for the bill. It's in the chat if you guys want to read it. Vijay Prakash shared it. Thank you, Vijay. Appreciate it. So, hey, that was all of the comments. Wow, that was a lot, guys. Still almost 50 of you guys still here with me. I've gone well over an hour. I thought I'd only go about 30, 40 minutes today, but, your questions, very emotional questions. If you have anything else, any other points that you want to make, please, let's post those in the chat now. Here, Sanjay says, yes, you are right. There will be a drop in students due to COVID, but the craze to come to the U.S. for masters is still high. And guess what? Those universities, Sanjay, they want those dollar bills, baby. Look at their names in the lawsuits and the attorneys representing them pro bono. They see dollar signs when they see international students. They just do. International students pay twice what American students pay for the most part when it comes to tuition. Big dollar signs. Abhishek, are you talking about 2021? When does the house come back, or are you asking? I haven't seen has the vote happened today? I'm sorry, I've been away and kind of preparing for today. I haven't seen, if the vote has happened or not. I would imagine it's got to be coming up pretty quickly, sometime in the next few hours here. But if you're talking about 2021, I'd have to look at a calendar. I don't know that off the top of my head. There's a lot of things I know off the top of my head, but things like that I have to research just to make sure. Try to keep accuracy here. But listen, from the bottom of my heart, tomorrow, well, the extension, Abhishek, is through tonight at midnight. So they would have to extend another day. So that means they would have to extend through midnight of, let's see, tomorrow's the 22nd. So it would be 12 a.m. or 11:59 p.m. on 12/22 if the vote didn't occur today. Because what you have is you'd have a government shutdown, federal shutdown, because the funding, the budget is not secured. What they've been doing is extending in basically hours. So 48-hour extension, 24-hour extension on the funding for the government. That's the big part of the omnibus appropriations. So we'll definitely keep our eyes on that. But I just, again, what I wanted to say is that thank you. I just thank all of you for joining me today, but thank you for your support and your encouragement. I want you guys to know that I'm going to continue to talk about this. We're going to continue to cover it, and we're going to continue to fight for equality. We're going to fight for an elimination of the country cap quota percentages. We're going to fight for DALCA kids like Samir's daughter and all of your other kids out there that are in this very weird window. We're going to fight for those here on this channel, and we're going to use the H1B Guy platform for you guys. We are going to help educate folks that aren't aware. And if you need to share my content to do that, then that's how you can help me. You can also help me by liking and subscribing. And, know if I can help you in any way, please, 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 please don't hesitate to reach out. Okay. I have several options that we can cover when it comes to one-on-one or others. But know that, if I can help you with my opinion in any way, don't hesitate. What I did want to mention, and I don't know if he's still watching, but if he is, guys, I alluded to this Friday, but this is very important right now. Take notice. Wednesday. So no content tomorrow, no new content tomorrow, but Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern. You do not want to miss it. It's going to be another H1B Guy live. Stamp it out. It's going to be Stamp It Out number 7. Okay. And I mean, I'm just so excited. We're going to have Dr. Raj Karnatak on at 2 p.m. To give you a little insight, Dr. Raj is an H1B. He's working in Milwaukee. He is an infectious disease medical doctor who has been battling COVID and fighting this pandemic on the front lines for the past 10 months. So we're going to talk about his life as an H1B, his medical journey here in the U.S. We're going to talk about battling the pandemic on the front lines. And most importantly, we are going to talk about the vaccine. And yeah, I had a lot of questions for it to him. I will tell you, just to give you a little insight, I have had some concerns about it. I think a lot of you probably feel the same way. But after I talked with Dr. Raj, I definitely had a little different take on it. I think you really want to hear what he has to say. Dr. Raj has been an advocate for not only H1B, MDs, and RNs, but the high-tech H1Bs that are in the green card backlog and fighting for the DALCA Dreamers. He is a huge advocate on Twitter. So join us, please. Please, please, please. You do not want to miss it. Wednesday, 2 p.m., the H1B Guy Live Stamp It Out 7 with Dr. Raj Karnatak. Sorry about that. My doorbell is ringing and my dog is losing her mind. Hey, Vijay, thank you so much. Merry Christmas to you. Happy New Year's. Cheers. Appreciate you joining me. Please come back on Wednesday for Dr. Raj. We are going to do a Q&A with Dr. Raj, but it will not be, don't really want to get into too much on HR1044, S386. We'll talk about it a little bit because I have some questions for him surrounding it. But in the Q&A there, I definitely want to keep it in line with his H1B journey and questions around COVID, being an H1B MD, and of course on the vaccine. I think that he's got a lot of answers for you guys, so I want to get his message out. I'm just so excited to have him join me. You guys have no idea. I can't say it enough. So, and then I'm going to take Thursday off, Christmas Eve, and I'm going to put out a video on Christmas Day for you guys. I don't know what time yet, but I'm definitely going to put something out. And it'll be the H1B Guy news for the week ending 12/25/2020. Those go out on Fridays. That is the process for the H1B Guy news. So I will put something out there, even if it's short. You're going to get something. So come back Wednesday, 2 p.m. for Dr. Raj, and then the H1B Guy news for the week ending 12/25/2020. I wanted to remind everyone that today's news and that today's live stream here was brought to you by RecruiterNetworks.com. the smart solution for digital perm ads since 2001. This national job board network provides recruitment websites in over 1,024 major U.S. metro areas. Each local job board is its own portal. It is a low-cost resource for immigration recruitment ads for all industries and professions with a flat price of $225 per ad, regardless of which city you choose. RecruiterNetworks.com has been the #1 place for immigration attorneys, immigration ad agencies, and employers to meet the DOL requirements for the digital portion of the perm advertisement rules. RecruiterNetworks.com. Please tell them the H1B guys sent you. I just wanted to thank everyone who took the time to put a comment here in the stream. I mean, I'm just going to go through it really quickly. Suresh, Abhishek, Vera, Samir, Ishan, Arik, Kapil, Ram, Dr. Raj, Himanshu, Harsha, Syed, Narav, Vijay Prakash, Nikhil, Sanjay. Thank you guys. Really appreciate your interactivity. We set a new record here today on the live stream. We went over 80 for the first time. So I guess my next goal will get to 90, and then we're going to get to 100, and then we're just going to keep going. So thank you guys. Reminder, if you haven't already, please like this video. Please subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube and click the bell for notifications. One last time, Wednesday, 2 p.m., the H1B Guy Live, Stamp It Out 7 with Dr. Raj Karnatak. Do not miss it. If you're still on, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to watch my live stream here today, for taking the time to watch my content and supporting the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube. I'm just so humbled and appreciative of all of your support. From my family to yours, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year. We've still got a lot of content to put out. We're going to keep going. Thank you all for taking the time to join me today. The H1B Guy, your global source